J'ai pas de son à terrasse.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's college readout, which is on the package adopted by the college today on Save Gas for a Safe Winter, and immediately pass the floor to the President of the European Commission.
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, we want to debrief together from this college the decisions we've taken with mostly the focus on gas demand. We know that today the start of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine is at day 147. But if we look in hindsight, we see that months before the war broke out, Russia kept gas supply intentionally as low as possible, despite the high gas prices. We've discussed it here in this room many times. We have seen that Gazprom had not the slightest interest to balance the market. On the contrary, it kept its storage levels as low as possible and the supplies too, and therefore reducing the supply, tightening the market, and driving up the prices. What do we see today? Today we have 12 member states that are hit by a partial cutoff of Russian gas or a total cutoff of Russian gas supply. And overall, the flow of Russian gas is now less than 1/3 to what it used to be, for example, at the same time last year. Russia is blackmailing us. Russia is using energy as a weapon. And therefore, in any event, whether it's a partial major cutoff of Russian gas or a total cutoff of Russian gas, Europe needs to be ready. We do not start from scratch, and that's good. We have already done a lot to reduce our dependency on Russian fossil fuels overall. We've set up a joint gas storage. The storages are now filled with 64%. We set up an EU energy platform for joint purchase. We have proposed our Repower EU plan. And you know, it's two pillars. The one is on supply, increase the supply from other trustworthy sources than the Russian. And the second pillar is on reduce the demand overall on gas. Perhaps on the first pillar, the gas supply from other sources than Russia have quite impressively increased since January this year by 35 BCM by now. So you remember that we had the US agreement on increased supplies on LNG. Norway stepped up considerably. Qatar, the Gulf states, Algeria. I was with Kadri in Egypt to sign an MOU on more supplies. We were 2 days ago in Azerbaijan to sign an MOU on increased supplies. And we have worked a lot on increased supplies through renewable energy. This is the energy of the future. This is the energy we need. Besides the fact that it is clean energy, it is homegrown and makes us independent. And there we have also good news, because since the beginning of this year, we have an estimated additional 20 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity. If you put that as an equivalent to gas, it's round about 4 BCM replaced by renewables by now. Today, we want to focus on the demand side, the energy saving. And we here too do not start at scratch. The member states are doing already a lot. What is the state of play right now? We have right now 11 member states that have triggered an early warning what their gas supply is concerned, and one member state has even triggered an alert. But we also know that we have to prepare for more. The preparation is not enough. We have to address, and this is for the first time, our energy security at a European level. We have to be proactive. We have to prepare for a potential full disruption of Russian gas. And this is a likely scenario. What we've seen in the past, as we know, Russia is calculatingly trying to put pressure on us by reducing the supply of gas. So it is a likely scenario that there's a full cutoff of Russian gas, and that would hit the whole European Union. A gas crisis in the EU's single market, our economic powerhouse, will affect every single member state in our European Union. Now, we have learned our lesson from the pandemic. We know that in such kind of a crisis, our worst enemy is fragmentation. And if we act in unity, we can address any crisis. We are much, much stronger than the sum of 27 member states only. And we know a lot is at stake, the well-being of our citizens, the jobs, our economy. So if we can act in unity, we can master the difficulties. What is the proposal? To make it through the winter, assuming there is a full disruption of Russian gas, we need to save gas to fill our gas storages faster. And to do so, we have to reduce our gas consumption. I know this is a big ask for the whole of the European Union, but it is necessary to protect us. And this is why today we propose an emergency instrument on the basis of Article 122. We have two objectives. One is every member state should reduce the use of gas. And our second objective is we provide a safety net for all member states. On the reduce of gas use, in case that we have a situation that deteriorates, like the full disruption of Russian gas, we trigger an EU alert overall for the European Union. We are asking the member states to reduce by 15% the gas consumption. 15%, why? This is the equivalent to 45 BCM of gas. And with such a reduction, we can make it safely through this winter in case of a complete disruption of Russian gas. This is calculated under certain assumptions, but this would bring us, if we save 15% to the storage, safely through the winter. And the motto is, the quicker we act, the more we save, the safer we are. On our second objective, solidarity. There are some member states that are more directly exposed than others to Russian gas, and they are, of course, more vulnerable than others to disruption. But all member states will suffer the consequences of such a disruption through the single market. So this is why it is important that all member states now contribute in the saving, the storing, and are ready to share gas with the other neighbors in case of need. Energy solidarity is a core principle of our treaty. We have already the security of supply regulation that foresees that member states can count on each other, and we are building on that the emergency instrument that we present today. I know these are testing times, but we also know by experience now in the crisis we've gone through that testing times require that we are well organized, well coordinated on a European level, that we show strong unity, and that we show solidarity. These are the three ingredients that make us strong and make it possible to go through any kind of crisis. We've managed the pandemic, we've managed the vaccination in that way, we've managed to create Next Generation EU. We've used this unity, this European coordination, and this solidarity in facing Russia's war. We've gone through applying 6 packages of sanctions. The 7th is underway. So if we look at the European Union today, I am confident that we can master this Russian-engineered energy crisis by staying together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President. Now, Executive Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Testing times, as the President has just said, and we are faced with an energy security situation that is unprecedented, and indeed it is a political creation by President Putin as part of his efforts to weaken us and to divide us. And in response to such a political action, political counteraction is necessary. Russia sees gas as a political weapon, so we need to have, at European level, a political response. It's not easy to predict what Putin's next move will be, but that he will continue to try and divide us and to hurt us is clear. So what we need to do, in any case, is to prepare for even the possibility of full disruption of gas supplies. All scenarios should be taken into account, even that worst scenario. And that's why in the heat of summer, we have to think about winter. We need to save gas now to keep our homes heated and industry running when winter comes. So when we say winter is coming, we just announce that the season is changing. We're not quoting a Game of Thrones. And we can do that. If we do nothing, one thing's sure, we will have shortfalls. And shortfalls will not just affect the countries where the shortfalls happen. They will affect every single member state because they will have serious consequences on our economy. And nobody can escape that consequence. So the choice we have today is triggering solidarity now or waiting for an emergency that will force solidarity upon us when the circumstances then will be much uglier and the response will have to be much more complicated. So if there would be a complete halt of Russian gas supplies, we will most likely fail to put enough gas into storage. And next winter, the winter after next winter, the situation could be even more dire. So we cannot, in good conscience, allow the situation to spiral out of control, because it will, as I said, also cause significant economic damage. But we can reduce potential GDP losses if we apply preventive reductions now instead of taking reactive measures later. If we do that, we can say to European citizens, you will not be in the cold and you will not be out of your job because Europe has shown solidarity. We believe the situation is urgent enough to invoke Article 122. We're calling on member states to make voluntary cuts now. We also need the possibility for mandatory demand reduction if the situation gets worse, and we would then propose to the Council to take a decision to go into that direction. We've opted to set a uniform target because it is the simplest, fastest, fairest, and also most transparent way forward. Every member state will need to take measures relative to their own average consumption. We will work together with industry to identify how to scale back and where. Thierry will certainly have a lot to say about that. And let me just underline this. Households and other protected consumers will remain protected. But they can also contribute by cutting the gas consumption. Many of the possible savings are no-regret measures. Think about it. Do we need to have the lights on in empty office buildings or shop fronts all night? Do we have to have air conditioning set at 20 degrees? Could be higher, couldn't it? Of course, it might reduce a bit of our comfort, but it might also reduce a lot of our consumption. And none of this will be easy, but if we act now, we have a choice about how we do it. We remain masters of our own destiny if we really do this. If we choose now to plan for managed cuts, to develop contingency measures together with industry, and give up a few comforts ourselves, every one of us, we avoid a full-blown crisis next winter. We must use all the tools we have, energy savings, of course, but also the other pillars of Repower EU, and I urge the Council to work hard on making it, on translating our proposal into facts. We need to keep diversifying our energy supplies. The EU Energy Platform can support joint purchasing and coordinate distribution of gas across the EU, and the rollout of renewable energy must continue to accelerate. As the IMF has recently studied, the cost of transition to renewables is lower than continuing with fossil fuel. Just imagine that. The cost is lower than continuing with fossil fuel. So transitioning is cheaper than staying where we are. And this, I think, we should keep in mind. If we can put this together, and I think we can, and I think we need to do that, then Putin's attempt to manipulate us will fail. Because he's not attacking individual countries. Sure, he will. But his plan is to attack individual countries to weaken Europe as a whole. So Europe as a whole is under his attack. A strong European response is the only response. Unilateral measures are not the way to go. They create severe distortions in the internal market, they're ineffective, and they can put the energy security of the entire EU at risk. And we don't want to give that gift to Mr. Putin. We have to move forward in solidarity, standing together and using our strength as a union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Simpson.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Frans. You have outlined very clearly the situation we are facing right now and why we need to act quickly, decisively, and together. And let me add a few more details. The possibility of Russia cutting off the gas supply to Europe hangs over us every day. We committed in Repower EU to end our dependence as soon as possible and reduce it by 2/3 already this year through diversification, renewables, and energy efficiency. But we acknowledged that even with these accelerated efforts, we would not get to zero in the matter of months. We have carefully analyzed, together with NSOG, what a full disruption of gas this year would mean for our security of supply. And the message is clear: if there is a full disruption, we will face a gap between gas supply and demand. We estimate that this gap would be around 30 billion cubic meters in an average winter, 45 BCM in colder one, and even larger if the winter is exceptionally cold. And we assume that also that non-Russian LNG and pipeline supply will remain high through the winter. To address that remaining dependency on Russia, we need to reduce gas demand, and we must also preserve our ability to fill gas storage for this coming winter and for the next one. So member states have made already remarkable progress despite the challenging situation on the gas market. And the filling level today is very close to 65%. But if the supplies from Russia are cut, reaching our 80% target by November will become very challenging. And if our demand reduction target is not ambitious enough, we risk ending this winter with empty storage, which would be impossible to refill in time of the next heating season. Taking all these factors into account, we're proposing a 15% reduction of gas consumption from the beginning of August to the end of March. This corresponds to 45 BCM of gas and will significantly reduce security of supply risks. By acting together in a coordinated and proactive way, it is us who decides our energy policy, not Putin. And by taking early action, we reduce the impact on the EU economies, protecting our people and businesses. Delaying comes with cost. It increases the negative impact on the GDP by at least 1/3. In our main scenario, this could mean a difference between a 0.6% and a 1.5% reduction of GDP. And to be prepared for this winter, we have put forward a legal proposal with a two-step approach. In the first stage, we call member states to reduce gas demand by 15% on a voluntary basis compared to their own consumption over an historical 5-year average. If the member states are not making sufficient progress or the situation deteriorates, we propose that the Commission can declare a state of EU alert at any moment, and this will trigger a mandatory obligation for the member states to meet the 15% gas reduction target. We are not telling the member states which measures they need to take, as they are the best placed to know what works for their energy system and economy. But to help them to implement the ambitious goal, we have also outlined options for voluntary gas savings from fuel switch to demand reduction. The aim of these measures is to avoid the need for forced curtailment of industry. However, if it does become necessary, we have set out guidance for member states how to take these difficult decisions, and Thierry will say more about that. In the EU, households are protected consumers, and there should be no risk of anyone being cut off heating, as the gas supply to homes is safeguarded. But everyone can and should save gas. And we will continue to promote the ideas set out in the EU energy saving plan and ask all member states to launch awareness campaigns to encourage gas-saving behavior. There is also considerable potential for the public sector to reduce demand, especially in heating and cooling. Let me end by saying that today's package has a very clear and specific purpose: to reduce our gas demand, and in parallel, intense work continues on the supply side. In the first half of the year, LNG supplies to the EU increased by 25 BCM and pipeline deliveries by 14 billion cubic meters. In total, we have received an extra 35 BCM of non-Russian gas this year, and the target of the REPowerEU plan was 60 BCM of additional supplies in 2022. The President and I just returned from Azerbaijan, where we agreed to more than double the gas volumes to the EU by 2027, and we expect to see an increase up to 4 BCM extra already this year. And we have also agreements in place with the United States, Canada, Norway, Egypt, and Israel, long working relationship with Qatar, and Algeria. All the work streams laid out in REPowerEU: diversification, joint gas purchases, ramping up renewables and hydrogen, increasing energy efficiency, and tackling high prices remain an absolute priorities. So this winter will be a test for the EU's energy system and for our union as a whole, and it is a test that we will pass if we act with unity, solidarity, and resolve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Et maintenant, nous avons connecté avec nous le commissaire Thierry Breton. Monsieur le commissaire, vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup et bonjour à toutes et à tous. Alors, la situation a été parfaitement évidemment décrite par la présidente, on la connaît tous, une menace hybride venant de la Russie avec comme arme le gaz, Frans l'a rappelé, une inflation proche de 10%, des prévisions de croissance du PIB en baisse, et puis plus généralement, on le sait, une forte inquiétude face au contexte géopolitique et climatique. Et donc, aujourd'hui, plus que jamais, il est nécessaire de préserver la solidarité et l'unité européenne pour ne laisser personne au bord de la route. Et quand on dit personne, c'est évidemment ni les ménages, ni les salariés, ni les entreprises. Et donc, pour se préparer à un hiver sans gaz russe, car c'est bien de cela dont il s'agit. On se prépare à un hiver sans gaz russe, et on va savoir le faire. On va centrer notre approche sur un triptyque que j'appelle les 3 S, substitution, solidarité et sobriété. La substitution d'abord, il est indispensable de tout faire, et dès maintenant, pour trouver des alternatives au gaz russe, pour la production d'électricité, pour le chauffage, pour l'industrie. Ça a commencé évidemment avec nos efforts de diversification et notamment avec tous les efforts qui ont été menés par la présidente, par Kadri, pour accroître très sensiblement nos approvisionnements, donc notamment en gaz naturel liquéfié ou en augmentation sur les pipelines qui vont nous permettre de combler, on l'espère, au moins la moitié des approvisionnements qui étaient des approvisionnements russes. Mais la substitution, ce n'est pas uniquement changer une source de gaz contre une autre. C'est aussi accélérer, évidemment, le passage du gaz vers d'autres sources d'énergie. D'abord, évidemment, tout ce qui concerne le renouvelable, et c'est possible, et on a donc des plans. Ils sont détaillés du reste, ils sont mentionnés puis détaillés dans la communication qui vous est présentée aujourd'hui, mais aussi vers d'autres sources d'énergie, si c'est nécessaire. Et il est parfaitement compréhensible, et même moi je les encourage en tant que commissaire au marché intérieur, que les États membres se tournent vers tout ce qui est disponible chez eux pour passer cet hiver, comme l'a dit Frans TIMMERMANS, mais aussi peut-être l'hiver prochain. Ces 2 hivers, en fait, dont on doit faire face aujourd'hui, et notamment en prolongeant, par exemple, des centrales nucléaires, comme l'a décidé, on le sait, la Belgique, ou en prolongeant d'autres centrales, y compris des centrales à charbon. Ce qui est important, c'est que les fournisseurs d'énergie commencent eux aussi à se mobiliser et c'est très encourageant pour aller et accroître dans cette substitution. Vous verrez du reste dans la communication qui est présentée aujourd'hui un graphe où on a commencé vraiment à travailler, et pas depuis aujourd'hui du reste, sur les différents éléments, ils sont très nombreux, de cette substitution. Le deuxième point, c'est la solidarité. Bien sûr, pour passer l'hiver, on aura besoin de la solidarité. C'est là où l'Europe donne le meilleur d'elle-même. Mais pour que cette solidarité fonctionne, il faut évidemment que chaque État membre prenne ses responsabilités. Et ceux qui demanderont la solidarité devront faire la démonstration, évidemment, qu'ils ont mis en œuvre toutes les mesures nécessaires à la réduction de la demande de gaz russe. Et c'est tout l'objet des mécanismes de gouvernance qui sont inclus dans la proposition de règlement que nous avons adoptée ce matin. Et puis le troisième point, c'est la sobriété. Sur les économies d'énergie, évidemment, beaucoup a été dit, mais je reviens quand même sur un point essentiel. Il était urgent de fournir des lignes directrices claires en cas de scénario du pire dans lequel nous nous situons. C'est une condition évidemment sine qua non pour garantir la continuité de nos chaînes de valeur, et notamment au sein du marché intérieur. Elles sont tellement intriquées. Pour assurer la fourniture des biens et des services essentiels, pour maintenir intactes nos capacités productives. Et pour ma part, mon objectif est clair, tout mettre en œuvre pour trouver des substitutions dans chacun des États membres afin d'éviter évidemment des fermetures d'usines pour préserver l'intégrité du marché intérieur. Et je tiens à le dire en conclusion, depuis le début de la guerre, à la demande de la présidente, je suis en contact étroit, constant, quotidien avec les ministres de l'industrie, avec les industriels de chacun des États membres. Et comme pour les vaccins, je vais continuer à être sur le terrain pour faire le point au jour le jour sur la mise en œuvre du plan au niveau industriel dans chacun des États membres. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Commissaire. Nous allons maintenant passer à vos questions. Je vous demanderai juste de vous présenter ainsi que le média pour lequel vous travaillez. On y va.
Thanks. Hi, in the middle. Oliver Kim with the Austrian newspaper, Die Presse. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to read the actual legal proposal because we haven't received it and the link in the documents you sent isn't working. But my question is there anything about a cut on cryptocurrencies? We know that these are enormous gobblers of energy and their economic purpose and use is a bit questionable. We learned that, for example, producing bitcoins is using as much energy as the country of Sweden is using. So are you planning to do something on this form of speculative activity? You're asking people to heat less, you're asking people to chill their homes less. What are you doing to go after this form of energy consumption? Thank you.
Kadri.
Yes, indeed. In the autumn, we are preparing, me and my services, a communication on the digitalization in the energy sector, and the mining of cryptocurrencies will be also addressed there. In today's proposal will guide member states not only to cut the consumption of gas, but also to look into the response demand. If we manage to avoid the peak hours, that means that in power generation there will be less hours when gas-fired power plants will meet the peak demand. And this is one option how member states can cut the demand for gas. Thank you.
The overall proposal.
Hold on.
Yes, perhaps.
Yes, President.
The overall proposal has the principle, and this is very clear, that it is up to the member states with very different energy mixes they have to decide on how to move forward and how to save gas. But the overall proposal also encourages and shows that with our coordination on a European level, we're giving guidance, we're showing best practices, we're exchanging knowledge on what are good ways right now to save energy. And for example, some member states have started to have the market auctioning of gas. So it's organized by the companies themselves. They offer gas that they don't need right now to a certain price, and somebody else, another company, might take it. So you have a market-based mechanism already to increase the efficiency and to decrease the use of gas. And there are many good ideas. I want to emphasize that right now, the 15% are aspirational. It's a voluntary goal, it's aspirational. And in case that we are in an emergency, then the target becomes binding. So it's time right now, it's the time right now to really use the best practices, the ideas that are out there. There are quite some experiences of the member states how to reduce gas, and everyone can contribute. Every single citizen, every single businesses, every single public institution can contribute.
Yes, the lady at the back. Yes. Yes. You need your mic, and you need to present yourself, please. Well, your mic is next to your seat. We have gone so virtual that we have forgotten how to use a press room. Go ahead.
Now do you hear me? Yeah. My name is Solveig Gram Jensen. I work for a Danish daily called Berlingske. And my question goes to Madam President. I wonder how emergent would you say these measures are? The war started on February 24th. Is this something we could even, the member states could maybe even have done a little bit earlier on? Thank you.
The member states do a lot already. And you see it at the different levels. They have raised awareness and attention. As I said, I think it was 11 member states that have already an early warning, and this has consequences. So recommendations how to save gas, and one member state already triggered the alert level, which is the second level. Afterwards comes then the emergency level. So there's a strong debate out there and strong recommendations really to save gas already. And I think it is important that we also see that we have on the supply side, in the last 6 months since the war started, been able to attract more gas from non-Russian sources than Russia decreased its supply of gas. So we have been overshooting already with non-Russian gas, if I may call it that way, also to fill our storages. That is the main purpose right now. And there are many good ideas out there that the member states can use.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yes, good afternoon, Christoph Schmid, Trouw, the Netherlands. Next week, the energy ministers will talk about your proposals, and probably there will be a vote with qualified majority. What happens in the case when some countries are not willing to participate and are outvoted? What are your legal instruments when they don't want to commit themselves to the 15%? Thank you.
So the legal instruments is the whole menu that we have to enforce the law. But important is also, I think this is something like I would call the absolute last resort. This is not the main way we deal with each other. It's, I think, creating the awareness how interdependent we are and how much it is important that we save now gas in order to have no severe recession on our single market. Because if we want to go against a darker scenario, we now have to save the gas altogether to protect our single market. That is our economic powerhouse, and this is our strongest leverage that we do have. And we have a part in the proposal today that gives every member state the possibility to present its case with the different figures, so that we look at all the possibilities that are out there. Right now is the phase really to create and to remind the member states how strong we are when we show solidarity. We have to keep the vivid memory of the pandemic in mind. We were, after really showing solidarity, really good. This is the region, one of the regions in the world that went the best through the pandemic, as difficult as it was, and it's not over right now. But what we are able to do and to create when it's really getting rough and tough, how strong we are with solidarity. And therefore, Putin is trying to push us around this winter. And he will dramatically fail if we stick together, and we'll get then stronger out of this crisis than we went into this crisis. I'm deeply convinced.
Thank you. I will go to the platform for a few questions before going back to the room, and I give the floor to Ardi Stemmerding.
NOS television. I therefore switch to Dutch with a question for Mr. Timmermans. Meneer Timmermans, zou u aan kunnen geven hoe groot zijn de zorgen van de Europese Commissie over wat ons te wachten staat komende winter? En u legt alle landen dezelfde 15% op. Maar voor landen als Duitsland of Italië, grotendeels afhankelijk van Russisch gas, zal dat veel moeilijker zijn dan voor andere landen. Hoe kijkt u daar tegenaan?
Nou, in de eerste plaats is het nu wel duidelijk dat Poetin zijn gasleveranties zal gebruiken om politieke druk uit te oefenen en te proberen de Europese landen uit elkaar te spelen. Een van de instrumenten die we hebben om daar iets tegen te doen is minder gasgebruik. En het punt is dat het gaat niet alleen om de landen die Russisch gas afnemen. Het gaat om alle lidstaten. Want als die landen die Russisch gas afnemen en daar sterk van afhankelijk zijn op dit moment, als die zonder Russisch gas zouden komen te zitten, dan heeft dat een enorm negatieve impact op de Europese economie. En daar hebben dus alle landen weer last van. En als je alle landen zover krijgt dat ze zich vastleggen op die 15% reductie van hun gasconsumptie, dan speel je ook gas vrij dat nodig is om delen van de industrie die geen alternatief hebben voor gas ook draaiende te houden in de komende winter. En dan speel je ook gas vrij dat gebruikt kan worden voor die landen die het meest in de knel zouden komen bij het niet meer leveren van Russisch gas. Er is een hele reeks landen dat nog sterk afhankelijk is van Russisch gas. Dat is niet alleen maar Duitsland en Italië. En die landen moeten, vind ik, kunnen rekenen op onze solidariteit. En solidariteit is een mooi woord, maar in solidariteit zit ook altijd een harde kern van eigenbelang. En ook die landen die niet misschien meteen geraakt zouden zijn door minder Russisch gas, worden wel ook meteen economisch geraakt als minder Russisch gas elders bijvoorbeeld tot het sluiten van delen van de industrie zou leiden of tot een recessie zou leiden waardoor mensen op straat komen te staan. Dat alles kunnen we voorkomen als we bijvoorbeeld onder andere gezamenlijk afspreken onze gasverbruik met 15% terug te dringen. Dat zal door de industrie moeten gebeuren, dat zal door overheden moeten gebeuren. Maar ik vind het mooie hiervan dat ook burgers, individuele burgers, in hun keuzes bij kunnen dragen aan minder gasverbruik. Overigens gebeurt dat in Nederland ook al heel sterk. Heel veel Nederlanders proberen zo snel mogelijk zonnepanelen te installeren, warmtepompen aan te schaffen, omdat ze weten dat dat niet alleen een bijdrage levert aan minder gasconsumptie, maar ook hun energierekening fors omlaag kan brengen. Dus ik denk dat als we dat gezamenlijk doen als Europeanen, dan kunnen we ervoor zorgen dat Poetin er niet in kan slagen ons uit elkaar te spelen.
So, we had a slight issue with interpretation. Actually, we don't have today Dutch interpretation. It worked into English.
Yeah.
We were lucky, but I'm not sure exactly. So let's be wary of that. Apologies for this. Okay.
I'll go fully French on you if you don't give me Dutch interpretation.
Ce sera avec grand plaisir. Giovanni, you have the languages into which we can interpret today on the table. Go ahead.
I will speak English. I think it's the easiest way. There are some member states who are somewhat skeptical about your idea of a flat percentage for everybody. I know that, of course, that everyone has a different basis on the 5 years and so on. But there are some member states who are saying we were more advanced in the last year in cutting gas, and now we have much less room of maneuver for cutting even more. So for us, it would be more expensive than for other member states who have done less, so they have more room of maneuver. So you said already that this 15%, I mean, the flat is the simplest and clearest solution. But I mean, if you can just elaborate more, and how can you address these doubts? Thank you.
There is a reason why we've taken the last 5 years on average the gas consumption between August and March. So Corona is in the years before Corona, so there is a really a leveled and balanced basis. And from that basis on, you have to reduce 15%. So if you've done already a lot, that's good, because you're better than the average of the last 5 years. If you have not done a lot and you have a high gas consumption, well, it is necessary really to start now to be very serious on that, because you might otherwise have a problem if the market is further tightening because of a full disruption of Russian gas. And therefore, I think it is it's a balanced metric that we are using. I know that there are different situations. The energy mix is completely different in different member states. But in the very end, why are we doing that? It's not only the focus on gas. It's the focus here on energy security for the single market. And by saving now, we can take much softer measures as we would have to take in case of a full-blown emergency immediately. And that's the purpose, to have now the soft measures, to have more time to apply that, to adapt, to, I mean, many citizens are asking, how can I help? Because they want to be part of fighting this Russian war of aggression in Ukraine. Businesses are willing to work with best practices if they have good examples from other parts of Europe, from other member states. So there are many possibilities really to go into the energy efficiency. By the way, it is also very important, that's not the main driver, but as a side effect, overall we have to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. I mean, we have in the back always the looming climate crisis that is huge, and we see the effects around us on a daily basis. So getting serious on that has many advantages. My last remark on it, the solidarity is also not only the sharing, but the saving, but also the sharing. And there are many different options. Either you have the pipeline connections, the interconnectors, you can share gas by that, or you can swap your contracts. For example, LNG that does not come to your member state, but goes to another one, or another liquefying station where it's more needed. So we are preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. But what we do now is we urge member states to do it in time. Then overall the negative impact on the single market will be much less. And the move towards our independence of Russian fossil fuels faster.
Thank you very much. I continue on the platform and I give the floor to Emmanuel Beretta.
Monsieur Breton, pensez-vous qu'avec ce plan, nous puissions empêcher les rationnements, aussi bien pour les particuliers que pour les entreprises? Et ma deuxième question porte sur cette turbine canadienne. Est-ce que vous pensez que, là aussi, Poutine bluffe et qu'il n'a aucune intention de remettre en route Nord Stream 1 si on lui livre cette fameuse turbine en réparation?
Alors, la première question pour M. Breton, mais la seconde, je pense, pour la présidente.
Bien, merci Emmanuel pour votre question. Sincèrement, c'est vraiment, si on s'y prend maintenant, et nous n'avons pas attendu, encore une fois, ce jour pour se mettre en mouvement, oui, je pense que nous avons tout en place, y compris évidemment le plan de réduction proposé aujourd'hui, pour être capable de nous passer totalement du gaz russe l'hiver prochain. Quelques exemples pour illustrer. On est déjà aujourd'hui non pas à 50 milliards de mètres cubes, mais 66 milliards de mètres cubes de gaz naturel liquéfié. On pensait que le maximum qu'on pouvait faire, c'est 50. Sur les 155, je le rappelle, que nous importons de Russie. On est maintenant non plus à 10, mais à 11 milliards de mètres cubes sur les pipelines existants. Donc on est pratiquement à 75 aujourd'hui, c'est-à-dire à la moitié qu'on a pu quasiment reconstituer en l'espace de quelques mois. Donc c'est évidemment très encourageant, mais il y a aussi tout le reste. Il y a les efficacités énergétiques, on a 14 milliards de mètres cubes sous la main. Le développement des énergies vertes, 11 milliards sur une année. Ce dont on n'a pas beaucoup parlé, c'est ce qu'on appelle le fuel switching, c'est-à-dire changer les moyens d'énergie qui étaient essentiellement liés au gaz, notamment pour les industries. Et c'est un travail qu'on a commencé à faire depuis 2 mois, écosystème par écosystème, pour voir comment on pouvait accélérer cette transition donc, et faire en sorte que les industries fortement intensives, notamment en gaz, et celles qui le pouvaient, puissent substituer cette dépendance et le passer au fuel, c'est 17 milliards de mètres cubes. Donc on a aujourd'hui évidemment un nombre très important, y compris, je l'ai dit, faire en sorte de rappeler des potentialités qui existent sur notre territoire, de créer de l'énergie. Ce sera autant de gaz en moins à consommer pendant l'année qui vient ou les 18 mois. J'en ai parlé dans mes propos liminaires. Donc la réponse, c'est oui. Si nous nous mettons évidemment en mouvement dès maintenant, c'est pour ça que je l'ai indiqué, nous allons être tous les jours sur le terrain avec les industriels, avec l'ensemble des États membres. Nous avons la possibilité de cette substitution. C'est un travail qui nécessite énormément de coordination, d'implication des États membres. Et puis on verra aussi, et c'est le deuxième volet, à la rentrée de l'automne, certains États membres auront su se constituer peut-être plus de réserves que d'autres. Et c'est là, il faudra faire jouer la solidarité. Mais c'est la raison pour laquelle, avec la présidente, évidemment, le Collège a souhaité nous préparer dès maintenant et dès cet été. Merci.
Mrs. Simpson, Sir Timmermans, you want to add anything on this? No? Okay, then we move to the second question.
Yeah, the second is on the turbine that went to Canada. It's now already in transit back. So there is no pretext not to deliver gas. By the way, there are potentially also alternative turbines that fit. It's not a one and single turbine in the world, but there are identical turbines. It is in transit, it will be there in time. No pretext not to deliver. We have heard Putin today elaborate on Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. Here I want to be very clear, Nord Stream 2 is not even certified and not at all operational, also to be clear on that one.
Thank you. Sam.
Thanks. A couple of questions. Just to pick up on the second one on Nord Stream 1, are you now anticipating that Nord Stream 1 will indeed be operational? And I mean, to what extent, to what from this week, and how much weight do you put on the signals that Russia is giving that it could resume shipments? And then on the emergency mechanism itself, if you move from 15% voluntary to mandatory, could you just give us a little bit more of a sense of what the circumstances would be if you moved to mandatory? Is it a full shut-off that you're talking about, which triggers that? Or is it that the member states themselves are falling behind when it comes to meeting their commitments on a voluntary basis? Thanks.
So on your first question, I think we should be very clear. Gazprom has proven to be a completely unreliable supplier, and behind Gazprom is, as we know, Putin. So it is not predictable what's going to happen. That's very simple. And therefore, I will not elaborate about different scenarios. That's the reason why we prepare for the worst scenario very clearly. And the trigger, indeed, the trigger for the emergency situation is either a drastic reduction of Russian gas or a complete cut-off of Russian gas that then will go into the binding phase. And you know that there are some assumptions. I think we spoke briefly about them already. The 15% are the amount that we have to save to make it through the winter. From now on, anytime, whenever this emergency level is reached, it's good to save already right now because this gives us more time. It's under the assumption we will have a cold to average winter, under the assumption we have the high levels of LNG ongoing that we had right now, and of course that we use our storage as much as possible.
Thank you very much. I go back to the platform and I give the floor to Susanna. Susanna, thanks.
Thank you. I have a question on solidarity. So I suppose that this is also a request for countries like Portugal that are not dependent on Russian gas. So do you think it's going to be easy first to ask for cuts in countries that actually are not that dependent on the Russian gas? And then do you think it's going to be easy to allow the sharing if needed? And also you are talking about a voluntary cut. But at the national level, I suppose we are talking about mandatory cuts. Otherwise, how can one be sure that the 15% cut is going to be reached or met? Thank you.
I would start on it, but then I would encourage also, thank you, Kadri. one thing is important. If you look at the different member states, there are a good example of member states that have reduced their gas consumption quite impressively already. So there are ways and means to do that. And the good part is we buy time right now in being so early with this proposal. There are good ways to slowly but surely reduce your consumption. The calculation we've done, again, I would like to remind, is from now until the end of March, these 15% have to be reduced, and there are many, many ways to do it. I would just encourage to look into the details. Everyone can contribute to that. And indeed, on the first question on Portugal, Kadri, if you would like.
Yes, indeed, we are already in this situation where several member states have cut their consumption compared to 5-year average, historical average. The best example is Finland, who was among the first ones who was cut off from Russian supplies. They have cut 54% of their gas consumption, despite the fact that they also lost electricity flows from Russia. Another example, Netherlands. I guess Frans was explaining it clearly, but Netherlands is one of our member states who have still its own gas reserves, gas-producing country. They have cut 20%. And well, member states are starting in different positions, but solidarity is also the key for our existing gas security of supply regulation. So when we will end up in the situation that there is emergency and curtailment needs, then we will act in spirit of solidarity. Today's proposal is to avoid this situation, to come through this situation so that we can, if we are acting in the spirit of unity and solidarity, also avoid the announcement of alert. That means that at this current status, member states can adopt measures that also include households, because there is a vast potential to save there. But at the level of emergency, households are protected consumers. And indeed, next Tuesday, we will have extraordinary Energy Ministers' Council. I do expect that all my good colleagues from national governments will explain that they have done their utmost, but EU-level savings so far have been equal of 5%, and this is clearly not enough. So we have to start coordinated savings programs right now if we don't want to face the worst-case scenario in the middle of the winter. And just my last comment on Nord Stream 1. Well, there are other pipelines who are delivering Russian gas right now, but at very low volumes. So if it would be only technical issue, there are connections via Turkey and Ukraine that responsible trading partner could use. This is not the case right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marco.
Yeah, thank you very much. Marco Bresolin, La Stampa. I have a question for the President. In the first phase, the reduction of consumption will be on a voluntary basis. So how will you incentivize member states to follow these, let's say, recommendation? I mean, if and when the target will become mandatory, are you going to count these 15% from this moment, or are you going to take in account from the 1st of August in order to take in account the effort already made on a voluntary basis?
Thank you for the question, because we obviously have to be better in explaining the calculation. We take the last 5 years, always the gas consumption from August till March. So 21, 20, 19, 18, 17. And there you have the average. This is the basis from which on you're counting. And then we say from this basis on, please reduce 15%. Some have already been, Commissioner Simpson was already explaining that Finland is outstanding, so it has already done its job in reducing from its own average the last 5 years, more than 15% gas consumptions. Therefore, the month is not relevant, it's the amount that you have to reduce. Second, how to incentivize, the discussion has to be, look, if we're getting into an emergency situation, there's going to be a big hit in the single market. And we know by experience, we can master that if we stick together and if we show solidarity also in sharing the gas. And those who are most dependent on gas, have the most Russian gas, will need the most solidarity at that point. So it's in their own interest to show solidarity in reducing gas in the time before there might be a full disruption of Russian gas.
Yes.
Just to be very clear, the 15% remains the 15% in both scenarios. It doesn't change because you go into another scenario. It's the same 15% vis-a-vis the average of the 5%. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
From now on till end of March, you have time to reduce the 15%.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Markus Becker. Markus.
It's a question for Commissioner Breton, and I hope I quote you correctly. You said that those member states who want to receive solidarity will have to show that they have taken all measures to reduce their consumption. So is this a hard precondition? In other words, if a member state will have made not enough efforts to reduce its consumption, will it then be somehow excluded from solidarity? And one question for President von der Leyen. It's about Hungary. Last week, Hungary announced that from now on there will be no exports anymore, no energy exports to other member states. How do you look at that, and how might this affect Hungary's role or Hungary's reception of EU solidarity, should it be necessary?
Well, I think it's important to understand that this is, of course, done on a voluntary basis, but this is why we are now discussing with every single member state to see everything that they can do, they do. Because, of course, when or if you will ask solidarity, we want to avoid, because we went through this together with the President at the beginning of the last crisis. We want to avoid a country saying, look, you didn't do what you had to do, so I will keep everything for me. And this is why we wanted to preempt this attitude, and we have now engaged a very comprehensive and positive discussions with, by the way, every single member state to see what they can do to increase and to accelerate this substitution. Because I keep repeating it, the key objective is to make sure that it will be no disruption on the market, and especially on the single market. And by the way, if you allow me on one single point, I would like to tell you that we have also some criteria. If there is an emergency situation, and that at the end of the day, we will be in a situation where when some member states will have, let's say, to reduce from some ecosystems, enterprise. So we have established very clear criteria that everybody will follow: societal criteria, supply chain criteria, potential damages to the industrial tool. For example, if you get glass, it will be very difficult to restart it. And also possible adjustment to the consumption of gas. So we are very clear, we have guidelines, we have a lot of things to share with the member states, and we are doing this in a good will. But of course, we need to start now, and this is what we are doing now, and we will start this summer. Thank you.
On the question of Hungary announcing that they want to reduce or stop the export of single products in the energy sector, there's important that we protect the single market. It's one of the principles, whether it's now energy products or other products. We have asked Hungary for detailed information. It always has to be targeted, it has to be proportionate, and it has to be plausible. The information is not here yet, so we're looking into that case, but we will protect the single market. Kadri, you want to?
Well, indeed, Hungary has not notified us why and if they have announced the emergency level, but well, restrictions on the exports in the internal market can only be justified based on very specific grounds, such as the protection of public order and public health, and economic grounds are never a legitimate justification, and well, there are no known disruptions for Hungary's supply right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of this press conference, but stay tuned. We now have a technical briefing which will allow you to continue asking your questions. Thank you very much.